Octopus Affair ASMR. Hello. My name is Todd, and I am a vampire. It sounds so strange. I guess I've never really said it out loud before. But it is January 17th, 2019, and I've been asked to participate in this interview, and not exactly pleased to be here right now. Really, I am more fascinated in why you are fascinated with me, because as a former human, I guess I can understand the Hollywood effect of what a vampire looks like on the TV screen. But because when I was a human, it was all about Dracula and Helsing. Those kind of vampires, but I never thought one day it would be such a lifestyle, such a curse, No, I guess you don't know. I'm sorry. I've never really done something like this before. I mean, for the last couple of years, I've been in solitary. So, but I hope whatever it is that I'm about to share with you, I hope you can find some use to it. I hope it turns a leaf over in the relatively new and albeit exciting, vampire-human relations. Maybe one of your first interviewees. I feel more like in a lab than a real interview, But okay, I've agreed up to that point to follow through with this interview of yours. So I guess there's no other choice. What would you like to know? I figured you would ask that. I guess it's not every day you get to know a vampire. I guess I understand. But you want to know how I became a vampire, huh? Well, that's really the most interesting part about the whole thing. I don't have much to say. I hope I don't leave you unsatisfied with my answers. I'm sure you're expecting this to be some kind of scientific breakthrough, but my life is not as exciting as perhaps an Edward Cullen's or a Peter Steele's or or for example the Count. No, Hollywood's blown it way out of proportion for you. I hate to say it, but you see, I didn't even like vampires when I was a human. I didn't see the merit, I can understand the hype and the excitement, but you're this supposedly dark, misunderstood, undead creature that thrives on blood. That's your life force, and your weakness is garlic, and you're afraid of getting a stake nailed into your chest. But hey, I'm sure a human would be afraid of getting a stake nailed into their chest too. I mean, it's really one of the only things that scares me. So, who wouldn't be scared of that? But nonetheless, I never saw the real glamour in being a vampire until I became one. I think people really overdo it. They really over-sexualize vampires, and they overhype them, and they create them into some sort of, seductive, incredible, just larger-than-life being. That's certainly not me. No. At least I don't feel that way. Hollywood has ruined it for you. I'm sorry. They've ruined it for me too, because now the world will never understand what it's like to be me. Well, I guess they never understood it in the first place, but you're gonna make me do this, are you? Okay, let me just try to collect my thoughts a little bit. It all started when, well, I guess you could say when I first became a vampire. I was at work. I blamed my job. I worked in a warehouse, and I'll never forget how angry I was when my godforsaken boss transferred me to the graveyard shift. It seems like such a petty thing now, given the circumstances that I'm in. But I was so mad. I said, no, I'm not going to become a vampire. Yeah, of course I was being sarcastic then, but I said, I'm going to turn into a vampire if you make me work from 9 to 5. That's 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. He laughed it off. He said, oh, Todd, you don't worry about it. You're going to love the guys on the graveyard shift. They're all a lot of fun. They're a motley crew. You're going to love them. But I never believed a word he ever said. But so anyways, it was against my will. Either that or find a new job, and I hate job hunting. I hate it just about as much as I hate hunting for blood, like I do now. No. I really can't decide which is worse. My memories of my human times really fail me, but did not want to find a new job. I was comfortable where I was. So I decided to stick it out, and really the graveyard shift wasn't that bad. I kind of laughed it off. I said, oh, what was I worried about? This is kind of a lot of fun. Don't gotta deal with customers, don't gotta, you're alone most of the time, you get to do your own thing, it's quiet, it's cool outside, there's no traffic, you don't gotta wait in line for lunch no more. It's got its perks. And I've always been a night owl, and ironically, I'm truly a night owl now, so not that I chose it. Anyways, to cut to the chase of what got me to where I'm at today. It all started with Ren. That was his name. He was a man, a bit older, maybe early 30s, perhaps, just a little bit older than me. Well, no, that's how old I thought he was, because really he was. He personally knew George Washington back in the colonial times and the birth of our country. He got to witness all that, and he's told me about it. Oh, and believe me, it was not as glamorous as the history books make it out to be. George Washington was not the George we revere and praise. He's, if I would have known him, I wouldn't have liked him. But those were different times, just like my life is the different times now. But anyways, when Ren got hired on, the first time I spoke to him, well, he spoke to me, what I thought would be a very small talk, sort of nondescript conversation. He had this way about him to really get people to start talking to him, because I'm kind of shy. I don't really want to go up and start chatting away with a stranger, which is at the time that's what he was. But anyways, he said hello, and he asked me how long have I been driving a forklift. we just kind of chatted, and we talked about our old jobs and how I used to unload trucks and how bad I hated that place. But it all seems so surreal. It's literally a lifetime away. But to say the least, I'm all out of blood. This isn't funny, giving me a coffee cup for blood. You're gonna have to give me a refill here in a bit if you want me to keep talking. That was the bribe. But anyways, as he was, I just felt warm. He made me feel warm when I spoke to him that first night, our first night on the job, and it felt like I was speaking to an old friend, as though I had worked with him all along. You know what I mean? I don't suppose you've ever felt that immediate connection towards somebody, no, but now that I understand some of the terms of vampirism, it makes perfect sense now what he was doing to me back then. Because I didn't try to push him away when he started just chatting and making small talk and just asked me how my day's going. Oddly enough, I wanted to talk to him, and it felt like suddenly that day turned around because Ren was a part of it. We were friends right off the bat. The funny thing is, he kind of did that to everybody. Within a week, he knew everybody's names. And a job like mine, that's no small feat. There's a lot of people, But no, everybody started talking about him just a week into it, and he's saying, "Oh, Ren's what a hell of a worker, what a hell of a guy, isn't he cool?" He became Mr. Popular on my job, but it seemed like I did too, because just out of the blue, I became his right-hand man. We started getting on the same orders, we started getting the same routes, completing the same assignments. Oddly enough, it seemed like we just sort of worked our way into each other's life through our job. That sneaky bastard. So a week goes on, and I've got a new best friend, and I go home and I tell all my friends about him, and I look back and I was just so excited to have met this older guy that really we don't have a lot in common, but we do. We just clicked, and it was a lot of fun. And I don't quite remember everything we talked about, but everything just came so naturally. We had this affinity towards each other that's really, I've never felt anything like it in my life. He was just, and there wasn't any sort of like attraction to each other. It was strictly platonic, just a solid friendship. It was, remotely a beautiful thing to see two people come together like that, especially in a workplace like mine. So, after a while of, working together, I started to feel like we should take our newfound friendship outside of the workplace, because what fun is that? Who wants to hang out in a warehouse all day? I mean, we're getting paid for it, and we had a few good times, but he was the kind of guy that I wanted my friends to know. But the really weird thing was, when I talked about, I said, hey, meet some of my old friends who are now dead. He said, let's head out for a drink. Let's go out after work. Come on, it'll be fun. And he became reluctant. And that was so out of character for this. It wasn't as confident and charming as he used to be as soon as I brought up hanging out with other people. And that was the first time I started to notice something strange about Ren, because I was curious as to how would somebody be so outgoing towards me, of all people. So, and then I started to realize that he went home early, just a little bit early. He went home at 4 o'clock a.m., not 5 o'clock, because he had what he said was some sort of medical condition where he needed to be asleep by a certain hour, or it would have costed him his job. He made a really strong point with the boss, and basically he didn't give the boss a choice, he had to. So the boss said, well, you've certainly proven yourself here at this establishment, this warehouse, so sure, why not? He could take off an extra hour early. It's the end of the day anyway, it really doesn't matter. So, and then I started to notice he would like one day we were talking and it was 4:15, we were out in his car and I was on my lunch break, but he was already clocked out and ready to go home. And he started to panic. He kept looking out the window, and he kept looking out at the mountains and looking towards the sky. And he was so out of character once more. I've never seen him act like that. It was, it was strange. And then I decided to be respectful. I said maybe that's a symptom of his condition, which I don't have any idea about. Did not have any idea about, but I now share his condition. So I told him, okay, you go home and you take care of yourself. Have a good night. And the very next day, we were driving our forklifts, and he asked me to go out for lunch with him, and I said, okay. And I remember we just went to Chevron. We went to the gas station. Everywhere else is closed. And we just went and got ourselves a little snack. Some food I want to eat ever again to this day. I can't believe I used to love it. Maybe being a vampire has really amped up my appetite for blood, but human food, even the good kinds I used to enjoy, just it's not even it won't even process anymore. It won't even strike me as appetizing. But certainly nothing out of Chevron was appetizing in the first place. But anyways, it was a nice night. It was about 6 months ago, so it It was a midsummer night, and we sat out on the hood of his car, and we just, it was a full moon, and the same thing happened. He just glared at the moon for all it was worth. And he didn't say a word. It was the first time in our little friendship, our little co-worker relationship, he became incredibly awkward and silent. And I repeatedly asked him, "Are you okay?" No. Just unblinkingly, just glaring at the moon. And finally, we went back to work, and as soon as he went inside, he snapped out of it. He was back to his good old self. Now, that struck me as odd. That was, I don't know, that I tried to avoid him for a little while after that, but I just couldn't. He was around every corner, and I started to notice it felt like he was going out of his way to spend time with me at work. It was kind of getting weird. At one point I talked to my boss, and my boss, he just had him under a spell. He said, "No, Red's a good worker, deal with it. You guys get along great, apparently. Why should I risk that? You guys are two great employees." So he said, "No, I'm not going to bother." No. Oh, and one other thing. His work performance was just outstanding. Even for being a new hire, it was just off the charts what he did and how he treated others. Every order he fulfilled was perfect. And even when he would stack pallets driving a forklift, they were always just one after the other. Perfect stacks. It was unreal. Our warehouse is a disaster, but not him. He brought such perfection into such a messy job like nobody else I've ever seen. But at that point, I knew something was up with Ren. So finally, he invites me over to his house, and he says that he has a wife, that he's told her all about me, and he wouldn't mind having me over for dinner sometime. Which is where I made my first mistake. And so I was off the next couple of days, and that was the last time I've ever worked a job like that again, or any job other for that matter. I wasn't looking forward to quitting by any means, but frankly, I didn't have a choice. So I say, "Oh, okay, fine, whatever. Maybe he'll snap back to being a normal human being and be my friend again, and quit being creepy if we go outside the workplace." And I understand that, though. People aren't the same coworkers when you work with them. When you're outside of the work, they become themselves. They get out of their shell. They become human again, which I kind of sometimes wish I could become human again. I still haven't gotten accustomed to what I am. But, so he texted me his address. And that was the last text I ever read, and the last time I've used a cell phone, for that matter. I just don't have use for one. And when I went over to his house, it was, the first thing I noticed was the big green hedges, like the giant, look like something like in Harry Potter when he goes into that maze, during the Triwizard Tournament. It kind of escapes my mind, but these big green, perfectly trimmed hedges, and they're about the size of basically as tall as his house. So that struck me as odd too, seeing that he would live kind of in a not so urban area, like semi-rural area, but he's got these giant hedges, like he lives in the middle of the city and wants some privacy or something. I don't know. It was weird. But nonetheless, I pulled up, and he let me in. He opened up the gate, and I drove and parked my car, and it looked like the house was a haunted house, but a very well kept, very modern. There was nothing haunted about it. I don't want to sound pretentious, but the blinds were shut, and you could just see how there were black curtains. Like, the windows are just dark. You cannot see a single thing. And it looked like the house had been shut in. Like they were expecting, like they were out on vacation, and they didn't want anybody peeking in there and taking their valuables, I just got the impression that maybe how does he work at a place like this and afford such a large house for that? It wasn't just the size of the house. I just knew it was a upper middle class home, and I started to wonder, maybe his wife is the breadwinner, not uncommon. So he didn't tell me anything about her other than I needed to meet her. So I went into his house, and he answered the door. He just let me in, and I felt like when I first met him, things were good again. He wasn't freaking out or being weird or being overly available. I felt that same warmth, and then I started to wonder, like, when I walked down the hallway, it was candles, not electronic lights, not light bulbs. He had candles lit, and I wasn't able to get much detail of the house just because it felt so dark. And that's the first time I noticed how pale he is. I mean, under the harsh lights of the warehouse light fixtures, it's just hard to tell who's pale and who's not. Everybody's just kind of the same glow, But now I started to kind of realize, there's something different about him tonight, because I've never noticed that before, And so I headed around the corner, and I wasn't expecting some sort of elaborate display, but he had the table was already set, and the silverware was something I wouldn't even dare eat off of. It was so. Wow, now I started to really get curious just what he was trying to do to me. Like, it felt like I was about to get kidnapped, or I was some sort of like reality TV show, or started looking for the cameras, And no, sure enough. So he introduces me to his wife, and it was the same as when I had met him. I just felt that same, like, engulfing warmth, and to be honest, I was really nervous to meet his wife. Like, it felt so strange that he would take me home to introduce her to her in the first place, but no, we had the same affinity, and she would not look away from my eyes. Every single word she said this. She glared at the camera like this. I mean, I just blinked, but she never blinked. She had this gaze, and it just hypnotized you, and it just got you. Suddenly, as soon as I met her, I quit becoming aware of my surroundings. I looked around, and I thought, wow, I feel right at home now. I feel right cozy home. And so I asked, we talked about her jobs, and she works as a phlebotomist, if I said that right. She's a blood specialist, and it did not click to me at the time because I was under her spell and I was with Ren, but doesn't make perfect sense for them to be vampires. I should have taken the red flag and ran with it then, but oh, I did the wrong, and I asked, "What's for dinner?" And they Ren looked at his wife, and his wife looked back at him, and I just remember his wife saying, "Well, the funny thing is, that's you." And that's all there was to it. Yeah, that's where I began, and that is where I also ended. You don't want me to elaborate, do you? Well, I suppose I could brace myself. When they did their thing, it was not quite what I would have imagined if I had been warned or knew what was coming. It was, well, Ren just, he grabbed me by the collar of my shirt, and he just lifted me up, and he just, the way that his face, suddenly I saw him for what he is, and a flood of emotion and sort of an eureka aha moment hit me, and all warmth and comfort and affinity I felt towards him and his wife. No, it was gone, and it was just fear. It was more than a panic attack. I had met my fate, and I knew I was dead, but I had oddly accepted it, and I had the comfort of knowing that I have power over death by choosing it and saying, "Okay, take me." Because when he picked me up, suddenly his fingers went into my throat. I could feel him just reaching into me, and just all of a sudden I couldn't breathe. It was choking, but it was the most horrible form of it's as if he had flattened my neck against the inside of his palms and squeezed it shut. And from what little consciousness I had left, he threw me down on the table, and I didn't feel a thing because, as far as I was concerned, I was already dead. And his wife just immediately just saw her lunge for me, and she was so fast. As far as I knew, she was standing underneath the door to the kitchen, and then she just jumped, and it wasn't even like she made it seem like she made the effort. She flew at me. There's no other description that I can think of. She just there suddenly. But from what I made out, Ren had me pinned by my throat to the table, and the last sound I heard in my human life, other than his wife's teeth clamping down upon my wrist, which you would not even ever be able to picture. It was the silverware clanking, and what I assume was my neck breaking. And then I blacked out. My was snuffed. It was over. I knew it was all over. I had let myself get murdered. And boy, did I feel guilty. Not only towards myself, but to my family and to my friends. I felt like I can't live with myself if they know that I will never return to them. I felt like I had betrayed them, that I had failed my mother and father by leaving this world, especially against my will. Even though it wasn't like I had committed suicide, I felt as though I had, because I knew something was wrong with Ren and his wife, but they would not allow me to believe it. I felt like a fool. I felt that my life was worthless because I had just thrown it into the arms of a stranger and died in his arms. So, the next thing that I was aware of was a bright shining light that just flooded my eyes, and I was blinded by the light, ironically, and saw these two blurry figures leaning over me. I cannot see their faces, and I couldn't feel my own face, because the first thing I did when I came to was, am I still here? Where am I? And I reached for my face, and I was numb, and I was cold, but I was aware of where one finger extended and where it ended, and I was aware of the shape of my nose and the ridges of my eyes, and suddenly those details started to take place in this numbness. It started to fade away from me, and it started to become colder, not warmer. You would think that if you're coming out of a deep sleep of a really, like a wide awake nightmare, you come to and suddenly you become warm again. No, I got colder, and I've been cold ever since. I've grown accustomed to it. Had it forced upon me, to be honest. That was when Ren spoke to me, and he said, "Todd, we love you, and that's why we've done this to you." And I tried to speak, but my throat was just sounded like you had dropped a rock into an empty well and just heard it clink at the bottom. I made the most guttural, deathly, horrible sound that I've never ever thought would have come out of me, but it did. And that was the sound of a death rattle. Now that I think of it, that was my death rattle. That was the sound of life leaving me behind, because I was still here, but my life and my soul had left without me. It was all gone. And here I was with my new friends, if you could call them that. They were not friends at first, but it took them a while for them to, explain themselves and win me back into their affection, But Ren, he said, I know you can't talk. Believe me, I've gone through this myself. And my vision became a little bit clearer, and I could just see his wife just grinning and smiling, and she just looked ecstatic. And Ren looked like a father would look upon his son when he is sick. He looked like he cared, and I could just see the genuine worry and concern he had for me in his eyes. But his wife, no. She looked like she was incredibly pleased with herself to have created me and done what she did to me. And what would seem like a lifetime, I sat on that table while they looked over me. And I said, I was finally able to make something of a word. And I just kind of hollered out, why? And without really providing me with much of a detailed answer, Ryan, he looked over at his wife, and they kissed really quickly. There's just a little peck on the lips. And it was more of a, hey, congratulations, we've done it, and we've accomplished this together. I'm proud of you, honey, I love you. And that's what they told me before I went back into my state of unconsciousness. They said, because we love you.